Hello, everybody. Nick the Terror here. I've decided to commit some of the demonstrations I do into the classroom into a little bit more formal video. So this might be repetition for some of you. Maybe you sat in the actual demonstration for the course. So this should be a little bit cleaner, probably be a little bit quicker. So I won't be asking as many questions. In one of the classes, we discussed the DMOJ website. And that is basically a website out of Canada that it's a contest platform. They give you programming problems. You can do them in different languages. You score points. They archive some of the programming problems that are presented at some competitions and stuff like that. And it's a really nice website if you want to practice your programming skills. So I often use or will be using a lot of their stuff just to kind of do some demonstrations because their problems target certain things. Now, if we look at my screen up now, this is information about the DMOJ.ca, just stands for Canada. And the problem I'm going to be working on today, let me go to it. Some of you might recognize it from class or discussion in class, but basically let's go through this one and let me break it down and kind of put it onto a video here. Let me read this to you a little bit. It's kind of a silly start here at the Concerned Citizens Commons. We have noted that the telemarketers like to use 7-digit phone numbers with the last 4 digits that have 3 properties. Looking just at the last 4 digits, these properties are: first digit of the last 4 is an 8 or 9. The last digit of the 4 is an 8 or 9. And the second and third digit is, or those middle digits are the same. And the logic behind it is if the phone number, last part of the phone number, last 4 digits, meet all these criterias, we can just ignore it. It is a telemarketer. Now, I'm going to expand upon this. I'm not so much concerned about submitting for grade on this, but I want to expand upon it. So we're going to do a lot of little things that this particular problem doesn't require us to do. All right, so we're at my Replit. We're going to do some Java here. And like I've done before, I just want to keep reiterating things. There's that word, iteration. I want to keep reiterating things so it becomes ingrained that we remember to do these things. So the first thing we know is we're going to need to grab something from the keyboard. So we're going to import that scanner class. So I'm going to say import over here. I'm going to say import Java util scanner. All right. And that's going to allow us to eventually instantiate, and create objects from that scanner class. And here we're going to create our main class, and we're going to say public class main. And what does that do? Well, a couple things. Public means any class in this project would be able to access this class. Class just says we're creating a new class here. Main reflects the name of the file. Later on in the semester, when we start building our own classes and create our own objects, it's going to help you out that we keep on doing this. Now, what's the first thing that we do? Well, we have to have some methods in there, right? So let's have our main method. We're going to say public static void. Remember, all that just means that all the other classes can use this method within this class. It's not going to create anything, and it's not going to return anything. And we're going to call it the main class. You notice that we have the main method. This is lowercase, so this is going to be a method. This is uppercase, this is a class. We're going to give it parameters. And like I said before, this is all going to make a lot more sense as we keep on working towards our Java, more and more better Java understanding. So we create our class, we have the method, at least one method in the class. Now let's instantiate, or let's create a scanner object from the scanner class. So we're going to say scanner. We're going to create that object name. Again, call it Alice or Bob. We're going to call it scanner. We're going to say new, instantiate or create a new object from the scanner class. And then we're going to give it directions that we want it. And we're just going to say take it from the standard keyboard. All right. Now, we've just got started. Small manageable parts. Let's grab the phone number from the keyboard. All right. So we want to create a string. We want to treat phone numbers as strings. That will make more sense later on as we keep working. But think about it. Some phone numbers, people don't give the actual number. They give a alphabetic number that reflects back to the keypad and stuff like that. So we want our phone number to be a string. And so we're going to create a string and we're going to call it phone number. And we're going to save a little time here. And we're going to get it from the scanner, all right, that object. And we're going to say grab the entire line. Remember, this is a method within this object. So we're going to grab it. And now, just to make sure that we're getting what we need to get, let's say system out print line, show us the phone number. Now, if this works, great. If it doesn't work, we can go back and fix it. Small manageable parts. So let's run this. All right, looking good so far. Let's give it a phone number, 440-525-7467, my office phone number. And it got it. Now, the next step that I want to do isn't really part of this problem. But what I want to do is I want to clean up the phone number. We all have different ways of expressing phone numbers. Open paren, area code, close paren, space, exchange, dash, and then a number. Some of us separate it by decimal point. Some people put spaces in there. So I want to clean that up. And you're going to see why I want to clean that up. It's not clean up. I want to massage the data. I want to make sure that the data that I will eventually use is consistent. So I'm not dealing with one person's format over another person's format. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to JShell. And I'm going to create a string. I don't know why. I'm going to say string. Why it's over there so far away. We're going to call it phone number. All right. And I'm going to put a value inside phone number. And I want my phone numbers to look like this. Area code, exchange. I want it to eventually look like that. But before I get there, what if I have this? 7467. How can I massage the data so it becomes consistent? One, I can look through it, and there's a lot of ways I can do it, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I just want to kind of introduce you to this general concept of getting the data into something we can work with. I can use the Java replace method that's part of the string class. So what I can do is I can say phone number is going to be equal to phone number, but this I'm going to say replace open paren with nothing. All right, so basically replace the open paren with nothing. And you can see that it replaced there. And I can go through this and maybe, how about if I do the close paren? And you can see I'm massaging the data or changing the data so I can get rid of things I don't want. So let's go back here and I'm going to do a whole bunch of replacements. I'm going to say phone number is going to equal to phone number. I'm going to replace open paren with nothing, basically a null. And what I'm going to do is, to save time, I'm going to do a bunch of copy and paste here. I'm going to replace close paren with nothing. I'm going to replace a space with nothing. I'm going to replace a decimal point with nothing. And I'm even going to replace a dash with nothing. Now, let's see if this all worked. And I'm just going to do a system out print line phone number. And let's run this and let's see what we get. All right. 440 space 525 7467. And you can see it took this value and it stripped out all that stuff. I'm going to get rid of this here. All right, we don't need that anymore. We've kind of tested. Let's test the code again, but this time let's change the format a little bit. And we're going to say 440 period 525 period 7467 enter anything. So now I have consistent data I can work with, and that's going to be important as we really dive into the logic or the Boolean logic associated with it. And where that's important is, let me fire up my Excel spreadsheet. It just took a little time. My machine's acting a little slow today. Now, what I have here is I have my phone number formatted with parens. I have my phone number formatted with decimal points. And what I'm trying to get is everything consistent. I want the things to be consistent because if you look down here, it's our first introduction or real introduction into the uses of indices. And indices are just, they point to a specific element of a string or an array. All right, and that becomes really important when we start working with arrays, but it is also important inside a string. It points to a specific location of that string. Now, or of an element inside the string. Now, let me go to this other thing. Ignore this stuff down here for right now. We're going to come to it in a couple minutes. Here's the phone number that I want to work with, 440-525-7467. Here is the indices. This is going to drive you crazy. The first indice is a 0. Computers like to start counting from 0. And the analogy I use here is the day you're born. How many years old are you? You're 0 years old. I mean, you have a value, but you're 0 years old. So we start counting the first location, the first element, the first part is represented as that indice of 0. Now, we're going to eventually want to hunt down the logic for those last 4 digits of that phone number. So let me refresh what we're looking for. We want to determine if a phone number is a telemarketer phone number. And to do that, we have to look at the last 4 digits. And we're going to look at them as strings. And the first digit of the last 4 digits, if that's an 8 or a 9, has the potential of being a telemarketer. If the middle 2 digits are the same, so if they're 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, potential of being a telemarketer. And if the last digit is an 8 or a 9, potential of being a telemarketer. But all 3 of those, first digit is an 8 or a 9, and the middle 2 digits are the same, and the last digit is an 8 or a 9, then we can filter that out and say that's a telemarketer. And we're going to do that by using indices, all right, these locations. So let's go back to here, and we've cleaned things up. That's a good thing. And let's start getting into some of our logic. All right, and we're going to say if. And what we can do in Python, inside Java, we can say there's another string method that will return just a character, right? And that string method is char at, and we would give it a indice. Now, if we go back here, we want this one here. We want that first digit of the last 4. That happens to be at indices 6. So we would say 6. Now, here's where life can get really interesting. We want 6 to be equal to 8, the character 8. So we're going to use the single quotes there. And we also want it, the possibility it could be a 9. So it's 8 or 9. In Python, we represent that logical OR with two straight lines. And we would put the same thing here. Phone number dot the character at 6, 9. And for cleaning things up, I'm going to put open and close brackets here, parentheses, and put my brace. So what this is saying is if that first character that is at the 6th indice, but at that first character, the last 4, if that's an 8, or, that's what this is saying, or if that first digit of the last 4 at indices 6, if that's a 9, potential of being a telemarketer. And we're going to use some Boolean logic here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to have I'm going to create a Boolean variable. I'm going to say Boolean. Boolean is a primitive variable. So I'm going to say Boolean, and I'm going to say FD for first digit, 8 or 9. Okay? And down here, let's say if it's 8 or 9, then the Boolean 8 or 9 is going to be equal to true. What if they're not equal to 8 or 9, right? Well, then let's throw in that else. And we're going to say FD 8 or 9 is going to be equal to false. And we're not going to go much further. All we're going to do here is test to see what that is going to be. So here we're going to say system out print, spell it correctly, Nick, print ln, and FD 8 or 9. So what are we doing here? We're basically seeing if that first digit of the last 4, which is at indices 6, if that is a 8 or a 9, then we're going to flag the first digit is an 8 or 9. If not, then it becomes a false. Let's run this. Keep our fingers crossed that I typed everything correctly. And let's put the phone number in. And it shows up as false, okay? Let's run it again, but let's give it a true value or true situation. 440-525-8-123. So enter, and it turns true. So we know that it's checking here for an 8 or a 9. And we can run it with the 9 just to verify. It might be a good thing to verify it. 440-525-9-123. So we're in pretty good shape here. We're determined that but is it still a telemarketer? No. The next thing we need to do is we need to see if the middle 2 digits are the same. And we're going to use similar logic. Similar, not the same. I'm going to say if phone number dot care at, now we got to go one indice over. So if we go back to my screen here, and we're looking at these two. So we're saying if the character at 7 and the character at 8 are the same, it might be a telemarketer. And 7. And here we're going to say if that is equal to phone number dot care at 8. So what's this logic? if the character at 7, index 7, is equal to the character at index 8, then let's flip another Boolean switch. Well, we first have to create another Boolean. All right. We'll go down here and we'll say middle digit same, true. If they're not the same, we're going to say else, MD same, false. Now, I know there's more efficient ways to write this code. This is more of a demonstration on Boolean logic, more a demonstration on indices and things like that. Well, let's test this one. We'll say system.out, println, MD same. And let's run this. Hopefully I typed everything in correctly. Or correctly, I'm sorry. We have an, oh, there it is. It's going to happen. Now, let's give it our phone numbers. And 440. We're not going to check every condition. We're going to do an 8, and we'll say 1, 2, 3. This should return a true. The first one should be true because it's an 8 in that first digit of the last 4, but it should return a false because they're not the same. So there's our true false. Let's run it again. True, true. So we verified that the first digit is an 8 or 9, 8 or 9. We verified that the two middle digits are the same. Now we have to do that last bit of logic that says, what is the last digit? If the last digit is a 8 or 9. It's going to be very similar to the previous one. And I'm going to say if phone number care at, let's find out what we are now looking at this one. So index 9. And if that is equal to an 8, or phone number dot care at 9, if that's equal to a 9, whoops, then we do some logic, or we do some tasks. Now let's break down, let's go back to my spreadsheet here, and let's talk about the and the or, the and or Boolean logic. And means that both conditions or all the conditions have to be true. So if we see here, if they're both true or if they're all true, then it's going to return a true for the and. If any of them, you can see this one is true, false, this one is false, true, and this one is false, false. Those are all going to return false values. The or, different. The or, only one out of, we could have multiple strings here, we could have multiple situations. If they're all ors, only one has to be true. So here's true, true, that returns true. True, false, that returns true. False, true, that returns a true. And false, false is the only situation where if they're not meeting this, both are not meeting the situation, then it becomes false. So if I go back to my program and we kind of look at the logic, this is an or. I should have typed, it wasn't going to run there. My machine is really slow. Good thing I caught it before I ran it. But it basically says if that last digit is an 8 or a 9. This isn't really falling into place. This is if that last digit is 8 or 9. So what do? Well, let's create another Boolean operator. Again, let me stress, there's far more efficient ways of doing this code. I'm just using it for demonstration. We're going to say last digit, 8 or 9. And guess what? We'll go down here, last digit 8 or 9, true, else last digit 8 or 9 is false. And let's verify. System.out print ln ld 8 or 9. Now let's run this code. Sorry for the break there. Something didn't work. So basically we're saying if that last character, the character at indice 9, that's equal to an 8, or if the character at indice 9 is equal to a 9, 8 or 9, then we're going to get into this logic here. So let's run the program now. Give it a second. And let's put a phone number in there. 440-525-9223, right? So we get true, true, false. Well, let's see. Let's run the code again. This time, let's see if everything is working there. So we're going to say 440-525-8339. This should be true across the board. The first digit is an 8 or a 9. The middle two digits are the same. The last digit is an 8 or a 9. So let's run this, and we see true, 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 true. Now, we haven't answered the question. The primary question of this entire lab was, or this entire exercise was, is this a telemarketer, right? Or we give it a number, is it a telemarketer? So let's zoom up a little bit and let's use some of our logic here. And our logic is going to be if first digit 8 or 9, 8 or 9, and middle is the same, and last digit 8 or 9. All right. Then we have something. Now, the interesting thing about Boolean logic, you notice that I don't have to test if this is true or not. I don't have to do that because it's already established that each one of these is either going to be true or false. So we get into our Boolean logic here. And again, it makes it cleaner, and you will use this in other programs. So here we would say system.out print line, and if every one of those conditions is true, that's what we're testing for, then we can say telemarketer ignore. Even if just one is false, right? Even because we're using the and, even if one is false, then everything is false. So let's say the phone number is 1668. Well, that first digit is not an 8 or a 9, so it's not a telemarketer. And we'll say else, and we'll say system out print line unknown pickup. All right, and let me fix this because it's broken, and fix that, and it's broken. So we have to have the situation where every single one of those things are true for it to be a telemarketer. If there's one thing in there that is false, then it's not a telemarketer. So let's run this, and let's give it a number. We'll start with 440-525-91234, or 123. No, it's unknown. It's not a telemarketer. Let's run it again. 440-525-9221. Still not a telemarketer. Let's run it again. 440 525 9338. First digit is a 9, the middle two are the same, last digit's an 8. This should be a telemarketer. True, true, true. It's a telemarketer. Interesting code. Yes, we can run this code or we can write this code far more efficiently. But I wanted to use this to kind of show you that Boolean logic and the things associated with it. Now, let me break away from the screen. We covered a lot in this program, not just the if statements, but we began to explore massaging data and working with data that were known. If we didn't do that initial massaging of data, if we didn't make it consistent, how can we do the indices? If I go, if I look back at the indices, sometimes it was at one place versus the other. So one of the first things we did was we cleaned up our data. We massaged it so it was always consistent. I know this drives people crazy. We were comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. Then we began to scratch the surfaces on indices and indexing, which becomes an important process, especially with arrays and lists and some other things we do. And then we really explored Boolean logic. We created Boolean variables and we were flipping them true or false. We started with none. We were testing the whole time. Now, if I was to just sit down at a blank screen and type this all out, that would be a challenge. I did it in small, manageable pieces. So as you're coding, don't worry about this so much. As you're coding, small, manageable pieces. Start with the simplest thing that they're asking for. Are they asking for you to input something? Then input might be the first command. And then as you're working, you keep on testing. That being said, let's go learn something.